Well, my name's Bart. I'm the head coach of Jets Australia, which I understand a lot of your audience may not know about. We're a 247 fitness franchise, and we have 260 gyms around the world, and about 140 here in Australia. And we started from very humble beginnings, and we've sort of grown to where we are now. And I feel very blessed in terms of the fitness industry because my role is from a national point of view. I look after programming group exercise to programming 6-week challenges to a lot of online content that we're really ramping up. We've started a podcast ourselves. I'm thankful I get to be a part of that too, because I like to converse and like to chat to people. And but I suppose my road to get here hasn't been too conventional. I grew up in country Victoria, which in I suppose a United States comparison might be the Midwest. It's rolling paddocks, lots of cows, lots of sheep. And I grew up with a very strong value set and moral set because of my parents and my family. And my parents were both teachers, so they helped me out a lot with those younger developing years in terms of institution and making sure I did my homework and making sure I was on the right track. But the best thing that they did for me was they trusted me. And my ethos has always been do what you love, and then figure out a way to make it work for you. And so I grew up playing AFL football, which I'm not sure if you're aware of. If you're not aware of it, just look up biggest AFL hits. AFL means Australian Football League. It can be a brutal sport, but I think it's one of the best sports in the world. It involves strength, speed, and like utter endurance. So you have to have a big rig, but you have to be able to move that rig for almost a half marathon every match. It's an incredible sport. So I grew up playing that, but I also had this other theatrical connotation to me, a different side to me, and that was through acting. So I really loved the stage and that sort of. I think I look back on it now. I really like the attention of it, but I really liked the creative process of creating something out of nothing and making people feel different and feel something. I really liked creating those environments. And so at the end of year 12, so at the end of high school, I said to my parents, hey, I want to try and be an actor. I want to go to acting school. I'm going to do that for 3 years, and I'm going to try and stomp the boards and be on movies and do stage and all that sort of stuff. And they said, yep, that's fine. Even though I'm sure they had that thought in their head was that there's no money in acting, maybe it's safer to be a teacher. So I did it. I went to acting school, did that for 3 years. And there's a part of me that really thinks that everyone should go through at least a portion of an acting degree, because what they do in first year, right, is that they break you down. They teach you how to speak again. They teach you how to breathe again. A lot of our Monday mornings, we're rolling on the floor and just breathing and finding vowel sounds, which sounds really woo-woo, but in a way, it was a sort of meditation and a sort of way to step outside your body and realize what your voice is and what your body is. I think that's a fundamental thing everyone should know. So went through first year, they broke you down. Second year of university or college, they build you back up and they introduce Shakespeare and text. And then in third year, it's all about professional practice. How what happens when you're hired and you get a script, and how do you act in front of directors and producers? How do you audition? Do you have your audition pieces? That sort of stuff. And then at the end of third year, they have a thing called showcase, and so it's the most nerve-wracking part of your entire degree. They 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 call out to all the agents in the city that you're in, and they say, "Hey, come along and see our showcase show." And the whole idea of the showcase is to showcase you. And if you're lucky, which I was, at the end of the showcase, an agent comes up to you and says, "Hey, we like the cut of your jib. Let's get you on our books and let's try and get you some jobs." So I was lucky enough to do that, and I've got a few roles here in Australia. I was on a TV show called Neighbours for maybe 3 or 4 episodes. The equivalent you may be aware of is like The Bold and the Beautiful. It was a soap. It was a very cheesy soap opera here in Australia. But that was a great learning experience. I did I did an ABC show called The Dr. Blake Mysteries. I did a lot of live theatre stuff, a few commercials. But about a year into that sort of process, I realized it wasn't for me, because not a lot of people know, but there's a lot of glamour behind movies and television and stuff like that. But it is so boring. to try and shoot to be an actor on a television show or a movie, right? Because you have 2 or 3 lines. It takes all day to set up the scene. You have maybe a 30-second shot to deliver those lines. If it's not right, they'll do it again. And then you're done. You take your makeup off, you go back to your trailer or your home or whatever, and you do it all again the next day. And that sort of a lot that made me lose the sparkle for that process. Again, I like the creative process. I like dynamic relationships and dynamic conversations. And so all the while I knew that I needed to look a certain way because of acting. And so I started hitting the gym. And so I did that at the end of 3rd year. And I knew there was something special there. And I think a lot of trainers know this. The first time you hit the gym or the first time you go for a run, there's something calls you, and there's something quite poignant and beautiful about it. And so I didn't really dive into the fitness industry until 2014, and it's a pretty harrowing sort of story. I one day I noticed a lump growing out the side of my jaw, and within about 2 months it grew to the size of a baseball, so 10.2 centimeters in diameter. And so I went and saw a doctor. I got a second opinion, and they did a biopsy and said, "Yeah, that's a pretty aggressive cancer, type of sarcoma, a malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor." Excuse the medical talk, and that we had to cut it out. And so the surgery wasn't as simple as cutting out the lump as it is. We had to sort of take the entire jaw, so that the bottom row of my teeth, as well as a bit of my throat, a bit of my tongue, we're going to take it out like a short rib, and then we're going to replace it with your fibula in your lower leg, because your fibula is just a supporting bone. It really doesn't do too much. And so they did it somehow. It's a medical marvel how to do this sort of stuff. So they moved the fibula up to my jaw. They replaced the tissue that was cut out with tissue from my quad, my left quadricep, as well as skin. And they sort of just sandwiched it all in to make it look like a mouth. And then I had to learn to swallow again, learn to talk again. And one of the hardest parts was that I spent the last sort of 3.5 years honing my voice. As I mentioned, at acting school, they would break you down, they teach you how to speak again. And I came out of that surgery and my voice completely changed. And that mentally, it was one of the hardest things for me. So sometimes I hear myself like on a podcast, like right now, and I go, that's a different person. That's not me. So I went through that hurdle. I had 3 weeks of radiation therapy just to make sure that all the cancer was out. Thankfully it is, and it was at the time. And the rehab process is where that little calling of fitness came back to me, and I started lifting weights. So at the time, I started at 75 kilos before radiation therapy, and I went down to about 68 kilos. So not sure what that is in pounds. I'll let you figure that one out. But it was a lot of weight to lose. I could see you doing the math. That's great. But then I started lifting weights again, and it was probably the best month of gains I've ever had in my life, because the muscle came back in a month, and your muscle memory is definitely a thing, 100%. And then I realized the power of fitness is magic. It can be magic if you see it through the right lens. And I wanted to share, and I still do. I want to share this power with as many people as I can, because I was in a really bad place at that point. I started lifting weights again, but at that point, I also chose that I didn't want to be a victim. It's very easy to fall into the fact that my fibula is gone, my jaw is gone. Radiation therapy is just the most awful thing. And so I told myself never to yield to the fact and never to use that as an excuse. And so I started lifting weights and I started walking. And that rehab process took a long time. But during that time, I got my PT certificates, decided to become a personal trainer. And I suppose that's where the story started, mate. It's that's where fitness started me on the trajectory of where I am now.
It's pretty crazy. I think everybody has that story somewhere in some way, but to hear one that is like transformational like that, and at what point did you start to feel like yourself, if that makes sense. And at what point did you start to be like, okay, this is kind of like me again?
It's funny. I look back on my time before I had the operation and the therapy and all that sort of stuff. And it's almost as if that Bart was a different person. And I look back on that Bart now, and he was very different to what I am today. So I don't think there was a moment where I felt back to my old self, but I felt like I've turned a page, and I felt like I gained the wisdom of maybe 20 years of the human experience in about 6 months. Because all of a sudden the attention from the cameras and the audience, that didn't matter to me anymore. The small things I used to fret about, that they didn't matter anymore. And it sort of it gave me a new lens. And I think that happens to a lot of people who go through trauma. You can you I don't think that they ever feel the same, but I think that they can remember what that feeling is like, but they'll always be a different person because of it. And you'll always be working through it. And that's another thing I've sort of learned after a few other instances in my life, is that I don't think there's ever going to be a point where I'm over it, or I've digested it, or I've processed it. It's an ongoing journey, like fitness, funnily enough. Um, but you always come out stronger in some way. And I feel really grateful for that strength. And I feel really grateful for that process, because I've felt things and I've thought about things and I've seen things that not a lot of people get to see, and felt things a lot of people never get to feel. And because of that, I have a really interesting perspective.
Right. And a lot of people have like a situation happen in life. Maybe it's not even to themselves, but it does affect them. And they think, oh, this is going to weigh on me forever, or I'm always going to like think about this thing. Do you find yourself still like waking up and thinking about it, whether that's in a positive or a negative way, like every single day, or does it almost feel like it's still there and it's still like in your mind, but it's not necessarily something that is kind of like this omnipresent thing?
It's always there. And I've talked to a lot of people who've been in a similar situation, sort of, and they feel the same thing. Whenever I now feel a pain, or I feel sick, or something not wrong with my body, my fight or flight kicks in, because I immediately think, oh no, the cancer's back. And it's hard to shake that feeling, because I know, like, the body's amazing, right? There's sort of, as far as I know, there's two sides to your brain. There's your conscious brain and your unconscious brain. And it's something that you take in 11 million bits of information every second, but you can only process 126 bits. But your unconscious mind takes care of the other however many million bits of information. And your unconscious mind can store these feelings and store these states and store these emotions. And so whenever something is wrong and I feel it's wrong, there's something in the back of my mind that goes, oh, fight or flight, it's back again. And then all of a sudden the anxiety comes on, and it can happen in an absolute instance. So I think there's something deep down that's holding on, and whether or not that manifests through anxiety, or through a thought process, or through body tightness, or whatever, I'm not entirely sure. But that's why it's important to keep recognizing it, and keep understanding that it's there. And a lot of people get stuck in the situation of just shoving things down and pretending it's not there. And then, but as soon as that pressure builds up, it's going to express in a really big way. As soon as the pressure builds up in a hot water heater, it needs to release somehow. But releasing that valve every now and then consciously, sometimes, I think can help.
Yeah. And does that like does that thought of like knowing that you overcame that, do you feel like you have like a responsibility or like an obligation to yourself to like live to your max now?
A little bit, but there's a double-edged sword. Look, I understand, and my perception of my time is now important to me. Because I know time is precious. Time in this life is precious, but there is a double-edged sword to the thought process. I need to live every second to the max, because all of a sudden, if I'm sitting there on the couch watching the football and, being a bit lazy, there's a guilt, there's a guilt that sits inside you that you're not out there doing something, progressing, helping people. So there is definitely a different perspective on my time and how I use my time and how much time I've got left, how much time we've all got left. But on the other edge of that, I try and not hold myself to a too high of a standard. In that case, I like to do things. I like to be active. I like to try new things, which I don't think the old Bart would have, and that's sort of a circumstance of what's happened to me. But I'm very aware that if I do try and push the envelope too much, I'm putting too much pressure on myself, because the fact is, and we all know this, for you, for everyone listening here, if you understand, the basics of fitness, there's a duality. There's only so much stress you can put on your body, that your body can take. And then the other duality, the other side of that coin, is you need the recovery. You need the time you need the rest and digest. And so I suppose that duality of life and fitness is something I'm always wary of, because everything's in flux. Your body's always in flux, and you need the recovery as much as you need the stress. In fact, there was a mentor of mine a little while ago, a long time ago now. His name's Luke Lemons, and he was a part of I can't remember what his company's name is. Fitness Nerds, Muscle Nerds, something like that. And he goes, beast mode is great. You can hit the gym. You can go beast mode every single day, but understand that there's another beast called least mode. So you need as much least mode as you need beast mode. And I love that lesson.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I've never heard it put like that. That's an interesting way to put it. In the kind of the day and age that we live in, there's a lot of complaining. Let's just put it that way, right? Sometimes unnecessary complaining on things that don't really matter. Do you do you ever get annoyed with that at all?
Mate, yes. If there was a way, like, I could click my fingers and get someone in front of me to see the way that I see things, I think that would change their entire perspective. But there's a duality to this, right? Because some people complain, but that's their reality. And when I was younger, maybe just after my surgery, just when I was a personal trainer, I used to have what I like to call a shake list. It wasn't an actual list, but the people I kind of just want to pick up and shake them and just say, what are you doing? Just focus on this. But I understand that feeling and that way of looking at things is wrong. Because as a coach, you got to, if you truly want to help someone in that situation, if there's someone that, complains about, if there's a client comes in to me for a session one day, and they say, yeah, I went to the restaurant the night before and they gave me the wrong appetizer, and then I asked them to send it back, and then they gave me the wrong one again, and I was furious, so I didn't leave a tip, or I didn't do this. My instinct is to go, that's so petty, don't worry about that. But as a coach, you need to meet them where they're at. And I like to think about this as the process of Aikido. And Aikido, I don't know much about Aikido except for the general philosophy of it. It's a martial art where you're using the person's momentum and the person's power to guide them against them. So it's rare that you strike, you wait for them to strike and then lead them. And I like to think about coaching as this. So if you've got someone saying something and you as a coach are opposing that, you're not going to move anywhere. It's two forces working against each other. But if you meet the client where they're at and all of a sudden turn the other way and guide them, take them down that route, take them through that feeling that they're feeling, all of a sudden you have control of them. You have the Aikido using their momentum against them. And at that point, you can change them. You have influence on them. And this is so I train a lot of coaches at the moment. And this is what I see a lot. So the coach says, I want you to do things this way. The client says, I want to do things this way. And then for the next 2 or 3 months, the coach tries to convince them to do things this way. And the client says, no, I'm done with that. I'm out of here. When really the client has to go, okay, we can do things that way, gain a bit of trust, and then start to change the way that they do things. So, mate, yes, there's some things that definitely frustrate me. About especially really petty things, and a guy that doesn't like confrontation as it is. But I'm at a point now, I'm 32. I've got a little boy, I'm a bit more chilled out about that sort of stuff, and I understand if I really want to help people, I need to gain their trust, and I need to work with them rather than say, hey, do things this way, or feel things this way.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to kind of think about it. I've never thought about it from like that guiding perspective. That's really interesting. I think we live in a world to where everything is like that bashing of heads and it's my way or the highway. And if you think this, then you're just wrong, and that's all there is to it. Are you looking for a supplement company that can help take your fitness game to the next level? Look no further than All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Their cutting edge supplements are scientifically formulated to give you the edge you need in the gym and in life. Whether you're looking to build muscle, increase endurance, or boost recovery time, All Sport Pharmaceuticals has you covered. And with a wide range of products designed for people of all levels, you're sure to find the perfect supplement for your needs. So why wait? Give your body the support it deserves with All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Visit their website today to learn more and start achieving your fitness goals.
Mate, 100%. And think about it this way: like this, and a really smart man told me this. He says, if you're really want to try and influence someone, as soon as you judge, or as soon as you assume something out of them, you lose your power to influence them. If you think that they're a certain way, you're making an assumption, and that assumption might not be correct. And so that's why I really love that fluid conversation and that fluid relationship of someone you're trying to influence.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you first got into fitness, did you go into it with any like, I want to achieve this or I need to do that? Or was it more for you just like, I just want to like be able to move and be able to be the best version of myself or be able to kind of just be a human being again? Like, what kind of way did you go into it?
I initially started fitness, as a lot of blokes do, from insecurity. You know, I wanted to be bigger, I wanted to look better on the camera or whatever. But again, as soon as that situation happened, my diagnosis and my therapy thereafter, it changed the way I thought about fitness too. And then, but the funny thing is that over time I've realized, and this is sort of a core philosophy of what I teach here at Jets, is that form follows function, aesthetics follow function. So if you look at how you perform and how you move and the joy of movement and all that sort of woo-woo stuff, the funny thing is all of a sudden your body starts to look better. Your body starts to move better. Your body starts to look better, and you start to feel a bit better too. In terms of major goals that I had, um, like we sort of had a chat about before we started this podcast, I liked being a jack of all trades. I liked being able to have a wicked 2K row time, but also be able to, deadlift twice my body weight. I love that. I love that polarization of energy systems and polarization of efforts, which is why I have a little bit of a dalliance with CrossFit as well. I think they do some really great things. But I've always sort of set mini goals for myself along the way. And I do understand that fitness is a journey. And I love the journey. I love the day-to-day grind, which I think is sort of one of the keys to success for a lot of people. It's never a destination. It's always a progressive target. You're always moving forward in some way. And I sort of have gone through seasons within my training. So there was a while there where I was all about Spartan races and obstacle course racing. And so I hired a great coach, and got reasonably good at that sort of side of things, and that's taught me the beauty of aerobic training and proper aerobic training, and how that can tie into muscle building, how it can tie into to people who just want to shape and grow their body, and then all of a sudden the transition out of that went to the complete other end of the energy system spectrum and did an Olympic weightlifting sort of phase. And learned a lot there. Again, the polarization and the neurological and the aerobic, the polarization of energy systems, I think does wonderful things for your body. But I think what gives me a really good perspective on fitness, again, sort of being fitness agnostic, is about 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a nervous system condition. It's called motor sensor peripheral neuropathy. The old school name is called Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. And it's a genetic condition. And what it means is I'm just slowly losing the use of my extremities. So if you look at me today, my shins are about the size of broomsticks, and my quads sort of take and compensate for what musculature I'm missing. I can't really feel my feet or anything below my knees. So my proprioception is really difficult. I'm just starting to lose the some movement and some tension in my pinky and ring finger. And it's a disease that sort of manifests in the third decade of life, mainly in males, and slowly progresses. So some blokes end up, in wheelchairs. Some have to wear stints. The prognosis is really, really hard to tell because everyone's different. But I can tell because I'm losing the muscle below my knee. My balance is getting worse every week, and so because of these limitations, I've had to learn to compensate. So I'm still squatting, still deadlifting. The thing that I can't really do much anymore is impact. So jumping and running, I can do it to a point, but to having no calves means that my hips take all of that impact. So they get quite sore and quite injury prone. But again, this is sort of an opportunity for me to see things a bit differently and to understand how to compensate when things aren't working your way. And so the goal for me now is still to have this diversity in my training. So I've taken a little bit of a break from CrossFit, which I've had to modify a lot anyway, just because of my legs. And I've gone back into a very traditional bodybuilding split. I suppose you could call it power building at the moment, which does focus on a lot of squats, a lot of deads, but a lot of accessory work and sort of undulating and periodizing the volume within that. But I can feel some sort of endurance sport calling me in the next few months as well. But the goal is to phase my training as such, go wherever my gut says, set many goals for myself, but to keep quality of movement. But I think the best thing for my legs is loading. So I've seen other guys similar age to me with a similar condition, and they've deteriorated a lot faster than I have. And I'm very grateful that I've been lifting weights for as long as I have, because it being a neurological condition, the more I can stimulate the nervous system, particularly towards max stimulation of the nervous system and the CNS, I think has spared a lot of degradation. And so the mission for me at the moment is to have fun with my training, be a really good role model for my 1-year-old boy, to be strong, to be fit, and to be a real guiding light for him, to show him that physicality can take you anywhere. Being strong in the gym will make you strong out of the gym as well. And to keep my movement for as long as I can. So I'm almost certain within the next sort of 3 or 5 years, my left leg will probably give out first, which means I'll need to have some sort of stint or brace on it, which will be an interesting journey to try and work around that. What movement can I do with that? How can I prevent that for as much as I can? And so that's sort of it's funny whenever you become when you become a dad, things change as well. Your perspective changes, and no longer do I need to sort of all guns blazing take over the world and go to failure on every set. Yeah, I want to be there for my kid. So, mate, that's sort of where I'm at the moment.
Knowing that it could potentially be there, but not necessarily be there, how does that kind of shape your mindset on like needing to like find this passion and like almost not necessarily burn out in terms of like energy, or burn out in terms of like physically burning out, but does it ever make you want to like burn it out, like just go all and just do everything that you can do to kind of like feel what you can feel, achieve what you can achieve?
100%. Absolutely. Particularly when it comes with fitness, like there's some movements I know that I shouldn't be doing, but I want to do them now because I know I'm not going to be able to do them in a few years' time. And I know something's going to happen. I know my legs are going to progress to a point where I'm going to need some support. What support that is, I don't know. But there's a very masochistic part of me that's like, excellent. Let's see what we can do with this limitation. Let's see how we can overcome this. And there's a part of me that's really looking forward to that point. But career wise, it's much the same. And it's a real mental struggle for me because I'm always wanting more. We talked about the live every day to your fullest sort of mindset when it comes to doing these things, physicality or career wise or goal wise. I suppose that sort of ethos of living every day translates into that more for me. And so I do put a lot of pressure on myself to, get to a certain point in my career, earn a certain amount of money, move in a certain way, look a certain way, feel a certain way. And often the reality doesn't meet the expectation. So there is, yeah, there is a big mental struggle there, I think. Yeah.
Is it something that you want to like continue to be in the world of fitness, even if you can't necessarily engage in it physically? Do you still want to be a part of it, or is there this other thing, this other kind of interest that you would delve into?
Not at the moment. I'm sure something will shift and something will pop up. But I'm so convinced that a stronger, fitter version of you or anyone out there listening to this will make this world a better place. And even if I can't express that myself or express it how I want to express it, I still want other people to be able to feel that and know that and understand that. And it's a really special thing because a lot of people connote fitness to burn calories, build muscle, and that's it. But they don't understand that if their priority is to get a better job or be a better parent or have a better mood or even financially earn more money, there's correlation between people who are strong and fit and their income, their salary. If they want other goals, fitness can help you get there. 110%. We might need to modify a few things. We might need to find the thing that works for you, but it can get you there. But at the moment, a lot of people don't see that. And you don't need to have a gym membership to do that. That's the thing. Fitness is free. But what's lacking is not necessarily information because people have that information. There's so much information on the internet. Just ask Chat GPT and you'll get an answer. The issue is the application. And so that's sort of my vocation at the moment. If I'm in a wheelchair, it doesn't matter. I'll still always push for this message and this feeling to be felt. And I feel a very strong urge to do that. That being said, I'm sure there's always something that will pop up. There's always going to be another endeavor, another shift, another passion. And if my gut and the universe want me to go in that direction, I know I'll listen to those cues. But nah, mate, there's far too many people in this world that don't know the power of fitness, and I'm here to show it to them.
We're so involved in just the way that we have always been doing things or the way we've always seen things done by our family, our parents, by our friends. Like,
because all of a sudden normal breeds consistency, and we know in the fitness game consistency trumps perfection every single day. And if it is, it's not normal to drink soft drink or soda, that in itself will have a huge shift. And I I hate that at the moment that if I have vegetables and a lean protein for breakfast, I'm the weird one. Like I'm the weird one for eating whole foods when most people will grab a coffee and a cinnamon roll on their way to work. Man, I love that idea. Shifting the paradigm of what normal is, but doing that it's a hell of a task. But I think it has to start local. And the funny, yeah. So I have this conversation a lot with people, and they say, my mum or my sister or my brother, they do this thing, and I'm a PT, and I'm trying to tell them not to do this thing, but they just won't listen to me. And the hardest people to influence are your friends and family, because I'm just Bart. I've always been Bart. I'm not the head coach Bart. I'm just Bart. But all of a sudden, if I lead by example, and if they see how much energy I have, how strong I am, how happy I am, and then they see that long enough, and they see my actions, eventually they'll come up and be like, "How? what are you doing? That's making you this way?" And I wonder if that's the way we start to shift that tide. Being, if you are a reasonably healthy person who works out every day, be the example. Don't shove it down people's throats, which I know social media does a lot, but be the example and start that local shift and change the normal. Mate, I love that. It's an idea that I try and teach our coaches in our gyms as well, in relation to getting clients or being a successful personal trainer. But the direct approach never works, because just as if you say, "Hey, mum, do X, Y, and Z," and they don't listen. If you walk up to someone in the gym who you've never met, they don't know you're a personal trainer, and they say, "Hey, do you want personal training?" They're going to go, "Hell no." Like there's no impetus to. But if they see you over the next 3 months being the example, leading by example, training people in the right way, being professional, then all of a sudden their perspective changes. I think the indirect approach is a long-term approach, but it does require the fit person to be proud and to not, hide the Tupperware in their bag, and, again, lead by example and be visible by example to try and influence, to try and shift people.
Yeah. And so you, at the beginning, before, I think it was before we started really deep into our conversation, you mentioned like how Australia is maybe a little bit behind in regards to like, in just regards to certain aspects, whether it be fitness or podcasts or stuff like that. What do you feel like is due to that? Like why is that? And then like, how do you also try to keep up with what is very, very current and then implement that before it does become more of a trend where you are?
So it's the American market and the Australian market in regards to fitness are very similar in some ways, but different in others. And so there's always going to be fitness styles or fitness trends that will land where you are, but won't with us. The I like to think of it as the Australian market has a high BS filter. So if there's someone out there sort of really spruiking things and really pushing and saying, hey, this is the best thing, you got to do this, the Australian market doesn't land with that. We need more of a subtle approach. But I don't know if you guys know this, but we consume a lot of your culture, particularly when I was a kid, because the Australian, in terms of culture, we're talking TV shows and movies. And so a lot of references we have over here are American references, even though we might not quite understand them. Like every Australian knows what the 4th of July is, but it has no significance to our country, you know what I mean? And so I think because of that media share, and because you America was developing within the media world and the culture world a lot sooner than we were, we follow you as a result. And so what you'll find, a good example of this is Planet Fitness, which I'll talk about in a sec. But you'll find when you guys, when there's something popular in the States, there's going to be someone or something that tries to either replicate it or bring it over into Australia because it's going to be successful to a point. And so Planet Fitness has just landed in Australia. And obviously there's a lot of Planet Fitnesses over in the States. But I'm interested to see how the model goes, because the gym model over there is, you pay a very cheap rate, so much so that's not even worth your time canceling your membership. Just let it run, go once a month, or what have you. But I'm not sure if that's going to land in the Australian market, particularly we're already quite saturated over here, but particularly with geography, like the Planet Fitness gym needs to take up a lot of space, and there's a lot of equipment. But people these days are more educated than they were. Maybe the client is more educated than they were maybe 10 years ago. And so they know if there's no deadlifting and there's no squatting, maybe that isn't the best gym for them per se. So in terms of keeping up with the trends, it's pretty easy. Our CEO here at Jets every year goes to the big fitness conventions and sees what the biggest stands are and what the biggest trends are, and then sort of filters them down into what can translate into our gym. Because the way Jets works is we're a small box. We're not huge. We're a small footprint. We're open 24/7. We have a pretty low staffing model, but we provide a lot of value for our members in terms of customer service and support. So it's not like we can grab this really big piece of equipment and just drop it into every single one of our gyms. We need to filter it through. So the process is go to these big, international conventions, see what's popping, see what's happening over in the States, and then seeing if that works within our model as well. But yeah, it's a very interesting relationship, particularly in the industry and particularly culturally as well, particularly with the internet and social media. We consume a lot of what you make, even though it may not relate to us.
That's funny. I actually had a few Australian ladies on here a while back, and they mentioned the same thing about how that, when they were growing up, there wasn't as much TV and movies strictly made over there. So it was like everything that they saw growing up was American. But in regards to like regional differences in terms of like fitness or health, is there that in Australia as well? This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. Looking for a supplement company that's as serious about your fitness goals as you are? Allsport Pharmaceuticals is here to help. Their top-of-the-line supplements are designed to help you get the most out of every workout with ingredients that have been scientifically proven to enhance performance and recovery. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting out on your fitness journey, Allsport Pharmaceuticals has the perfect supplements to help you achieve your goals. Plus, with their commitment to quality and safety, you can trust that you're getting a product that's both effective and reliable. So what are you waiting for? Take your fitness game to the next level with All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Visit the website today to learn more.
A little bit. The geography of Australia is fascinating, right? A vast majority of the population is on either coast, either east or west coast, either in Western Australia or in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. And in the middle, which is the majority of the country, there's not much, like in terms of people and in terms of infrastructure. And I suppose that's the beautiful arid land that is Australia. It's enormous. And so what we find is that the more we go inland, so away from the coasts, the more, I suppose, very generally here, the more the health goes down. And so when you're closer to the cities, the more the perceived health goes up. But there's a particular part in Northern Australia. So in South Australia and in Victoria, it can be quite cold. And so the colder weather breeds a different market, which is really funny. So at the moment, right, it's winter here in Australia. Where I am, it's quite warm. You know, it's shorts and t-shirts almost all year round. But in Australia, in Victoria, it's puffer jackets and scarves. It's so cold down there, and so because of that, the market is different. So there's a particular coastline where I am in Queensland, which sort of spans from a place called the Gold Coast through Brisbane up into the Sunshine Coast. So you can see gold, sunshine. You can tell it's quite warm up here. That sort of pocket or that sort of strip, I consider the sort of the mecca for health and fitness. You see tanned bodies, the saturation of gyms is a bit higher up here. If you look at all the influences and where everything's being shot and produced, the Gold Coast and Sunshine, Gold Coast in particular, but Sunshine Coast a little bit, is where it's at. So because our country is so big, the market changes a little bit, but the trends and growth patterns are reasonably the same. Because we're in Queensland, we're in the mid to north of Australia. We see our support offices. We see a higher number of clubs around us, just because it's closer to the headquarters. It's closer to that. And so we'll often see more clubs pop up in this part of the world than other parts of the world. But mate, it sort of depends where you're at. But I suppose where we are at the moment, you could consider the California of Australia.
Because there is so much content produced, and you kind of mentioned it a few times, that is consumed from produced in America and consumed by I guess the rest of the world. Do you get kind of like a general sense of what some of the differences are in regards to like the perspectives on health in general or on fitness in Australia versus maybe America or other places throughout the world?
Perhaps a little bit. Like if you look at the trends of American health in terms of heart disease and diabetes and metabolic syndrome, all that sort of stuff, we follow that trend, but we're obviously not as advanced in that trend as you are. So we're seeing just about the same rate of obesity go up, just about the same rate of diabetes going up. So we're sort of following you in that state as well. But in terms of the difference of connotation of fitness or the feeling of fitness, I do think that there is a little bit of a shift. It's not fitness at the moment. So what I'm seeing a lot coming out of America, this is through my lens and through my algorithm, is that fitness at the moment is quite politicized. Like I'm seeing posts of people saying health at any weight, love your body, or all this sort of stuff. And it's politically charged in a way that there's a message or there's an agenda to it. We really don't have that down here. Of course, we have advocates for those health at any weight sort of pushes. Of course, we do. But we sort of don't put too much weight into it. Again, an acting teacher told me years ago that you'll find the accent of a population will match their demeanor. And so the Australian accent is very flat, we're very flat. We rarely hit our continents. Our land, our country is very flat, and that sort of suits our that suits our behavior as well. The Australian no worries mentality, or no, don't worry about that, mate. That sort of mentality feeds into our behaviors and our connotation towards fitness as well. So I suppose to sum up, we're following your trends. Absolutely, there is a little bit of a difference, but um, it's still the same issue. It's still the same thing happening down here.
And do you feel like being an from the American perspective, like an outsider looking into America, do you feel like that people look at America as almost like this, like what's going on there? Okay, here's what's going on. Here's things we should do. Here's things we shouldn't do. Does it feel like that at all?
A little bit, but I think there's also there's a side to it that everyone's different, and you can't judge a population, a country, a state. You can't judge that off the opinion of one person, even though the media might want to think you that way. But mate, I have a very strange obsession with your country. I've been there, I think maybe 7 or 8 times. I love that you're. Firstly, I love how accommodating everyone is. Multiple times I've been in a big city, totally lost, no idea where I am, and someone's come up to me and said, "Hey, are you lost? Can I help you?" And you don't often get that in Australian cities. And I love that your culture is it's very similar to ours, but very different, uh, and almost quite novelty. But from an outsider looking in, look, it's very easy to read the headlines because they are very alarmist headlines, and make a judgment and assume something. But I think we're sort of smart enough to understand that America is a huge place. Everyone's very different. And if you're pushing an agenda, that'll always sort of come out as the headline. But um, no, mate, it's I think it's a case by case basis.
To me, it's weird how we have this globalization and everybody kind of like is on a similar page in terms of what's going on, but things are still so different.
They are, and I love that. And Australia is a bit like that too, particularly in Melbourne. Like again, Australia is a country of convicts. That's sort of how we developed. But we do have a very rich indigenous culture down here too. But one thing that's different between our countries is, I think you touched on it just before, is state by state, because there's so many states in the states. Funnily enough, and the laws that are governed by state, we really don't have that much of a difference between states here in Australia. The laws are very, very minorly different. Like the road signs might be a bit different, but that's about it. But I remember driving. So we went on a family trip to California, and Dad thought it'd be a great idea to get a big van and drive the whole family from Napa Valley to Vegas. And as soon as this is a great lesson in sort of the difference between states. As soon as we crossed the Nevada border, we saw a casino, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, we haven't seen this our entire time here." But the laws must be different between California and Nevada in terms of casinos and what they can do. And this casino was right on the border, so 50 meters down the road, you're in California. 50 meters the other way, you're in Nevada. And I didn't understand the huge difference between states in America and the political systems that run those states. So we don't really have that in Australia.
That is one thing I think that a lot of people here in America almost take the country for granted, as far as like the stuff that you can experience here and like the things that you can see here. We all want to like go away, right? We all want to go to different countries and we want to experience the world, and we don't see America as anything like special.
That's interesting, and I think it's a complete opposite here in Australia, right? We, from my point of view, we're drawn to you because of the media you've shared and the culture that you've shared with us. And your country is incredible. Like a lot of people take the Grand Canyon for example. That thing is crazy. Like there are some incredible parts of your country that I'm sure you take for granted, but we do the same here in Australia. We have, where I live, there's a beach. In fact, there's a coastline of beaches that are the best beaches in the world, hands down. Any beach I go to internationally pales in comparison to the beaches I have here at my feet. But I take it for granted, but I don't get that perspective until I goes, somewhere else.
Yeah.
But that's the human condition, though. Always, what's around you is what's around you. You're always going to want something else that's out there.
What do you see are some of maybe those things that are getting better in terms of health?
Yeah, there's two things that pop to mind, and one was a meta-analysis that was done a few months ago. Now, I'm not sure if you saw it, but um, the whole ethos was that they found that exercise was a far better intervention than any other intervention when it comes to mental health,
I did see that.
depression, and anxiety. And people are talking about that, and people are understanding that. And I just think even that little paradigm shift of understanding that exercise is more powerful than SSRI is huge. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, and this is a bit strange, but strength training. So a big trend over here at the moment is people just getting really strong. And I'm convinced that strength training will soon become the government recommendation of fitness. At the moment, it's 150 minutes of exercise per week, a bit less if it's higher intensity or medium intensity or what have you. But I'm convinced that that will change because in terms of long-term fitness results, long-term health results, strength training trumps anything else. It's infinitely variable. You'll never get bored on it if you have the right coach, and it'll yield the best results year after year if you start the investment now. And so we're seeing that shift. We're seeing people who previously were on the treadmill for an hour, all of a sudden jumping in a hex bar and doing a 5x5. And that makes me so happy. They're still on the treadmill, they're still running, they're still getting their cardiovascular and respiratory health from that, but they're lifting heavy. And I'm so excited to see where this sort of trend takes us, because from a coach's point of view, there's nothing better than that. So I think those are the two main things, mate. The instance of exercise as being a better intervention than anything else for health, for mental health, and this trend of strength training makes me really happy as a coach.
Does it feel like that information could almost just be like, we got to slide that under the carpet. We got to put that, put that under the rug and make sure as few people know about that as possible, because otherwise we can't sell these services. We can't sell these pills anymore. Does it feel like that over there as much as it does here?
I don't think so. Well, at least I haven't seen that just yet. But you're right though, because you know, delving into conspiracy theory or not, big pharma and the whole healthcare system, they want you to be sick so that they can keep making money. And I'm interested to see how that may influence this message. But at the moment, we're not. As far as I know, we're not seeing that. It's people lifting weights of any generation is slowly becoming the norm in terms of marketing here in Australia. And a big push for that as well is functional fitness. So there's a lot of functional fitness boutiques outside of CrossFit that are doing really well at the moment, promoting this increase in metabolism by weight training. In fact, there's one here on the coast that's all they do. They don't do any conditioning work. There's no ergs in their gyms. It's all body part splits and weight training. But I'm yet to see that swept under the carpet. I'm not sure if that's a difference between cultures, but I suppose we'll soon find out.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I just think there's a lot of people here that are suspicious, right? Like they see things that aren't going well. They see that, the way that things have been done and the promises that have been made and the side effects, if you want to call it that, the side effects of literally everything, whether that be literal side effects of a drug or side effects of the lifestyle that's almost been told to us is okay and is fine and will get you to where you want to go. None of that is paid off in a good sense. And I think people are just starting to, in some ways, question the motives behind all of this stuff. I think my generation and younger, especially, they're going to start to think like, okay, well, if these things are right, then why is everybody dying so young? And why is
Yeah.
everybody having all these issues? And why is everybody allergic to everything now? And why is everybody, why do kids have all these issues as well? And all these things, like, I just think we're at that almost that tipping point of like trustworthiness.
Like, what do you think is feeding that? Like, I know at the moment, you can search anything on the internet and find a like-minded group of people that believe in this way or believe in this conspiracy or what have you. Do you think that that's feeding it? This confirmation bias of being able to find people like that?
I think that people are I think what feeds it is that even though there's two like very, very, especially right now in today's day and age in this country, there's two very, very different parties, political parties, right? But both of them are unhappy. It's kind of weird because it's actually flip flopped the last maybe 10 to 15 years. It used to be you would have like Republicans would be very weary of government, and Democrats would be very weary of big business, and now it's kind of
Mm,
flipped, right? I don't, for whatever reason that is, um, but in both cases, when that flip happened, people were still like, oh, I'm still unhappy, even though I've kind of switched
mm,
to the group of which I kind of look up to in a weird way. I'm still not satisfied with like the world that we live in. People are still, the economy's not benefiting the small person. The job's salary is not going up in 20 years. The price of everything has gone up, or the health of everybody is worse. So I just think that there's this general consensus of like, okay, we thought you were the bad guy, then we switched, and now we realize that both of them are actually maybe the bad guys. So like, what do we do to bring them back down onto our equal playing field, to where we have more transparency, to where we have more um, accountability? I think that's a big one, right? Because you see
mm,
massive companies to where they don't really care if they have a product that doesn't do what it should do, because all that's going
mm.
to happen is they get sued for a couple 100 million. But guess what they did? They made 17 billion off of it. So I just
Yes.
think more accountability, and also in regards to government, like why, like people are sick and tired of a person being in office for 50 years and nothing being done.
Mm,
Why are we even voting for these positions when in reality it doesn't really matter, because the big ag and big pharma and big this and big that, big tech, are they're the ones that are really, filling the pockets and making laws happen. So I just think that there's so much,
mm.
just tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired, that we're just coming to this point, like a breaking point.
I can totally understand that. I used to I used to volunteer for a youth leadership organization, and we used to do activities to teach kids lessons and that sort of stuff. And one of the activities was called Spy Land. Stay with me here. So the idea is you split them into two groups. There's 10 people each group, and their mission is to build a Lego windmill. And so they have 10 minutes to do it. There's no, there's a picture of the windmill. They have to find a way to work with the team to build this windmill. But the catch is at the start of the game, we tell them within your team there is a spy. And if you find some spy behavior, I want you to put up your hand and say that person's a spy. If there's a second, then they're out of the game and your team's down to 9 and then 8 or what have you. And so spoiler alert, there's no spy. And so by the end of the game, they're so fixated on looking for spies and seconding spies and putting people in jail that at the end of the game, the windmill doesn't get made. There's a one or two people left, and then they're all really disappointed because there's no spies. What you said just then reminds me of that game, because people are looking for spies, and in their mind they're finding spies. They're looking for someone to blame. They're looking for something to explain what's going on, but they're not finding it. Then all of a sudden they move to someone else and they think that they're a spy. But at the end of the day, it's either we're all spies, or there's no spies to call for.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. It was really great to get to chat with you, and would love to have you back on sometime to kind of dive deeper into some of this stuff.
Yeah, mate, I would love that. We can dive deeper into a bit more fitness stuff. I think we went on a few tangents there, but I love it. Thank you for having me, mate.
Absolutely. And if you want to kind of share any social media or whatever, feel free to do that.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at walsh.fit, WALSH.fit. But we also have a podcast called The Personal Best Podcast, powered by Jets Australia, Jets with a double TS. And we made it for our members, but we've made it open source. So if you want to sort of get some really applicable, easily digestible fitness information, give us a follow and have a listen.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll put that info down in the description. And definitely go check out his social media pages and stuff like that. I've kind of dove into some of that stuff, and you have some really good information, some short form content. I look forward to kind of checking out the podcast as well. But it was a pleasure getting you on here today and getting to chat with you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Daniel.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.